They did not march with banners, no horns announced them, no songs followed their steps. When the city gates fell that night, witnesses would later swear the streets were already empty, as if the world itself had stepped aside. The order arrived in silence, and silence followed. This is the story of the night a city fell without a single enemy at its gates. A story of a force that comes not to conquer, but to correct. The city of Halvern was built for war. Its walls were thick, its towers tall, its gates forged to resist a siege for years. Merchants boasted that no army had ever breached them, and they were correct. No army did. On the night Halvern fell, the gates opened from the inside. No guards were bribed, no traitors were named, no alarms were raised. The locks simply turned, as if by an unseen hand, and somewhere in the dark, beyond the walls, armored figures stepped forward, their forms swallowed by the night. They were called the Order, though they never named themselves. They were a myth, a whisper shared by tyrants in their sleep. That night the myth became real. They entered Halvern not as invaders, but as an inevitability. The city hadn't been defeated. Its time had simply run out. Those who entered wore blackened armor, completely devoid of any crest or sigil. Their cloaks bore no mark of allegiance, no color of a kingdom or a lord. Even their blades were unadorned, just pure, polished steel, stripped down to its lethal purpose. Years later, observers would struggle to describe them. Not because their faces were hidden behind their helms, but because they gave nothing to remember. They were a void given form. They moved in a perfect, unnerving formation, precise and restrained. Each step was measured, each gesture deliberate. When one of them stopped, they all stopped. When one moved, they all moved, a single organism of steel and shadow. They did not speak, they did not need to. Their purpose was clear in their silence, in the chilling unity of their advance. They were not an army fighting for land or glory. They were an instrument, and the city was the object of their work. The city guard, trained and vigilant. Torches flared to life across the ramparts, casting dancing, nervous shadows. Steel rang against stone as swords were drawn. Orders were shouted into the night, sharp and urgent, echoing through the empty streets. The order did not answer, they simply advanced. The first clash was over in seconds. Blades struck once, then twice. The guards, brave and loyal men of Halvern, fell without even a cry. It was not a battle. It was an execution of a function. When the first drops of their blood touched the cold cobblestones, it was already too late. The city's defenders broke. Some turned and fled into the labyrinthine alleys, their courage shattered by the silent, implacable foe. The order did not pursue them. They had no interest in routing soldiers. They only moved forward, always forward. Their objective was not the city's defenses, but its dark, beating heart. At the very heart of Halvern stood the House of Chains. It was a fortress within the city, a grim monolith of stone and iron where prisoners were held and inconvenient decisions were buried forever. It was here that the order finally turned its unwavering attention. As they approached, from the towers, bolts hissed through the air, each one aimed to kill. In perfect, fluid unison, a wall of shields rose to meet the volley. The bolts struck the featureless steel and fell away, harmlessly clattering on. The ground, the order did not falter, did not even slow their pace. They reached the massive iron-banded doors of the fortress. They did not bring a ram, they did not try to break them down. In the same way the city gates had opened, the locks on these doors turned. They opened them, and from inside the screams began. And just as quickly they ended. Beneath the House of Chains, far below the surface, lay a series of cells that no official map ever recorded. These were the forgotten places, the holes where men and women were kept without names, without charges, and without seeing the light of day. Some had been down there for so long, they had forgotten their own faces, forgotten how many years they had been buried alive. When the heavy cell doors creaked open for the first time in an age, the prisoners recoiled, but it wasn't from fear of their captors, it was from recognition. They knew what these silent, armored figures were. They were not saviors coming to liberate them. They were not executioners coming to end their misery. They were something far more absolute. They were judgment. The order moved from cell to cell. They cut chains with single, efficient strokes. They unlocked doors that had been rusted shut. Then they simply gestured once. Those who could walk followed. Those who were too weak were carried. No questions were asked. No words were exchanged. The guilty had been silenced above, and now the wronged were being gathered. While the order worked in the depths, the city's elite guard, the Iron Griffins, gathered in the central square. These were not the common city watch. They were veterans, knights and commanders who had survived a dozen wars on foreign fields. They formed their ranks, their polished shields gleaming under the torchlight, a wall of seasoned discipline and unwavering loyalty. This time the order halted its advance. A space opened in their silent ranks, and for the first time one figure stepped forward from the rest. He reached up and removed his helm. It was not to reveal his face, but to be acknowledged. A silent demand. For a critical moment the guards hesitated. They saw not a man, but the symbol of something they could not comprehend. That single moment of hesitation cost them everything. As if that was the signal they were waiting for, the order surged forward as one. Steel flashed in the night. The griffins' proud shields shattered like glass. The square, a symbol of Halvern's strength, became a graveyard of discipline broken by a discipline far greater, far older. When it was over, no fires burned, no buildings had fallen, only the guards lay silent on the stones. Before the first light of dawn could touch the spires of the city, the order was gone. They left no banners planted on the walls. They issued no proclamations of victory. They left no signs that they had ever been there at all. Only absence. The prisoners they had freed from the house of chains vanished with them. In the city's archives, records disappeared. Names were erased from the heavy ledgers that had once condemned them. It was as if they had never existed. By morning, Halvern stood intact. Its walls were unbreached, its markets ready to open. But it was no longer the same city. A deep, quiet fear had taken root. The powerful now looked over their shoulders. The secrets they thought were buried forever had been unearthed and carried away into the darkness. Halvern had been weighed, measured, and found wanting. The order had not destroyed it. They had hollowed it out. Those who lived through that night speak of it carefully, in hushed tones, even years later. They say the order does not conquer territories, it corrects imbalances. They say it does not seek to rule, it simply removes corruption. The survivors have a saying: if the order ever comes for your city, the city was already lost long before they arrived. The order merely comes to finish what has already been decided by the actions of those in power. They are not an army you can fight. They are a consequence you must face. They are the final entry in a ledger that has been ignored for too long. They are the silence that follows the lie. So when you hear stories of a silent, faceless force moving in the night, do not dismiss them as mere legend. They are a warning. Some forces announce themselves with fire and the noise of war. Their banners are a declaration, their trumpets a challenge. But other forces arrive quietly, wearing no names, leaving no witnesses, and walking away before the world even realizes it has been judged. The order has no banners to fly, no kingdom to claim. But when it comes, its silence is the loudest sound in the world, and in that silence even kings learn to listen. Thank you for watching. If you find stories of hidden powers and silent justice as fascinating as I do, consider subscribing and joining our community. We have many more secrets to uncover. Until next time, stay curious.